My name is Cameron Collins. I'm a revenue operations strategist with RevPartners, also a community manager with Sprocketeer, the largest independent community of HubSpot admin. I've got my amazing co-host here, Mark Lerner, Director of Growth Marketing for Deal Hub. And then
The
we've got
Vanna
our,
White of the organization here.
that he is. And then we've got our guest, Mr. George Thomas, Chief HubSpot Helper, owner of SidekickStrategies.com. George, I know
Oh,
that I know you do a lot of really wonderful things helping companies streamline their business through building out their HubSpot CRM, scaling marketing, sales, service ops. Tell everyone a little bit about just who you are, what you've built with your YouTube channel, Hubheroes, some of the things you do with your interviews, and just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
yeah. So first of all, can I be the Ryan Seacrest to the Vanna White? Has everybody heard that's the change that is being made? Pat Sajak is retiring. Ryan Seacrest is going to be the new host. Anyway, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen, or you didn't, whichever. Cameron, thanks. Mark, thanks. First of all, this opportunity. It's been a real interesting journey since 2012 through a couple different agencies. Started with Marcus Sheridan. I actually started with Wild Boy Design in Massillon, Ohio with Zach Basner, then went to the sales line with Marcus Sheridan, and then a little stint with Impact Brand and Design with Bob Ruffalo, and then a lot more years with Remington Begg and Rachel Begg at Impulse Creative. Always being an employee, a number two to a number one, always creating video content, podcast content, and building a little bit of a brand around George B. Thomas. One of the number one questions I get, Cameron and Mark, is what's the B for? It's because if you search George Thomas on the internet, it's a Civil War hero or a mathematician, and I am neither of those. So literally in 2014, we added the B just from a search hack a kind of standpoint from that. And then it just grew into this George B. Thomas or GBT thing. But now I live in a world where I've gone in the last 2 years from I don't want to be part of an agency. I'm a solopreneur. I'm going to eke out an existence and do some HubSpot implementation, HubSpot coaching, HubSpot training to we just on April 1st, because that's the kind of guy I am, launched Sidekick Strategies, which is now our agency that we are moving forward with. With that, we are doing things like the Hubheroes podcast, the Sidekick Strategy Expert Interviews podcast. Heck, we even started a personal growth podcast called Beyond Your Default, because as we'll talk about, it's all about the humans. Sometimes the professional humans need to learn how to be good personal humans. And so I wanted to be having the conversation on both sides of the fence, so that no matter which direction they wanted to go, we could go ahead and have those conversations. But now we help humans with HubSpot, and we help humans be better humans. That's literally what I do on a daily basis now.
I love this because, as we all know, HubSpot itself is a software CRM, it's a technology. And I know that really something that you're passionate about, as I think we've all heard here, is helping to drive that human first approach to HubSpot. Now we have a lot of other themes that we'll be digging into today, including, wrapping HubSpot around your business, the mathematics of a good HubSpot account, how to create good HubSpot super admins. But all of this is really wrapped into the container of having a human first HubSpot approach. So, George, I want to hear from you. What was the inception of this drive to really focus on the people as opposed to the technology?
Yeah. So a couple things that people need to historically know that aren't really talked about in a lot of places on interviews that I do. One, I am a nerd from way back, meaning I tried to be a football player in high school, and I was, but I was also the dude on the chess club. All right. And that says something about the kind of guy that I am outwardly and inwardly, mentally. I'm also a recovering youth pastor, associate pastor before actually going in to the tech space and like the design development journey that I've been on, and then that led into HubSpot. I've also been a bouncer at a bar, AKA even a bartender. So no matter if it's the pastor or the bouncer and the bartender, like they're the same pulpit, they're different style pews, but it's the same type of problems, right? So I've literally been made to think about this way of like humans and how they are, how they act, the journey that they've been on, the problems they have, how they might solve them. And what's real fun is if you look at my journey, I started in a one-room log cabin at 3 years old in Lincoln, Montana, with no running water, to today I sit here and we're running an agency with employees. And so also the span of just what it is. Listen, I rode my pony to a one-room schoolhouse, right? So the precipice, though, is taking all of that kind of down home, being in Montana, going through life, learning life lessons. And then we get to 2012. And in 2012, I actually ended up winning tickets with the owner of Wild Boy Design, who's Zach Basner. And we went to Boston. We got to hear Gary Vaynerchuk speak for the first time. It was our first inbound. Been super blessed to be there every year that it's happened, except for the year that it was virtual. We won't mention why that was. But here's the thing. In 2012, I heard HubSpot say, "Don't call me customer, call me human." And I immediately was like, I can get behind this. Like, I love this. It is all about the humans. And there's some certain things that when I say that, and also I want us to realize when I heard that, I didn't only hear, "Don't call me customer, call me human," but I started to think about the external experience and internal company and what that meant from this human perspective and how you would run a business and how you would actually serve the people that business is meant for.
So I think that's a really special thing. For me, one of the things that really drew me to revenue operations was the notion of being able to help a business grow and scale. And the fact that as companies grow and scale, they can have larger impact. And so, whether that means hiring more employees, whether that's the product or service that they provide. And I think anyone that's listening to this podcast will likely agree. But my belief is that the CRM is really the cornerstone of your business. And so if you have a CRM that nobody is using, nobody knows how to use it, people don't want to use it, they don't understand the why behind it, then ultimately you have a technology that can be really sophisticated, but it's not going to have an impact on the business. So, what are some of the ways that you take the idea and the notion of a human first approach and getting people bought in and adopted into the CRM? And what does that look like from an implementation standpoint?
Yeah. So it's interesting because if we are going to correlate a SaaS software to this human first mentality, we have to realize that, especially HubSpot, there are different parts of HubSpot. There is the CRM, there's the marketing tools, the sales tools, the service tools, the operations tools, and you even have the content hub and the commerce hub. Right. So let's think about that from a human perspective. The CRM is the portion that holds all of your data and information. The CRM is the part that allows you to create custom properties to ask smart questions so that you better understand the people that you're serving. The CRM is literally the heart and mind of your organization. It is where you remember the things that you need to remember. And it's probably a part of the feeling of what you're going to try to achieve amongst your teams and create the experience. If we start to think about sales, I go to arms and hands, the hunters, the gatherers, they're bringing things in, right? When I think of service, I think of the legs and moving us into a direction and making sure the humans are going in the right direction. When I think of marketing, I think of the mouthpiece and the ears, right? Like the head of the actual organization. When I think about the content hub, I start to think about the makeup that we're putting on top of all of this, or the suntan lotion, depending on what part of the body you're thinking about right now. And when I think about the commerce hub, I think about the wallet that has to be, or the purse that needs to be on every shoulder or in every pocket to actually be able to get this human to be able to go from point A to point B and survive day in and day out. Now, I've literally correlated the arms, legs, head, body, heart, to a SaaS software. But when you start to break it down, and these are the actions that these people take, and how does it work as an entire unit, RevOps, by the way, instead of independent departments, now internally and as a business, we start to get places. So that's just on the HubSpot side. Now, there are some like mindsets that I think organizational leaders marketers, sales reps, service reps, RevOps technicians, super admins in a HubSpot portal need to have. But if you don't fundamentally understand that HubSpot is allowing you to create a digital body of what that business is going to encompass and do, that's where you need to start.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful because it is so ethereal to say that a CRM is the heartbeat of your business. But how do we actually liken all of the things it can do with all of the teams that it impacts and with why those people should care about it? So when you're coming into any given company, how do you get the leadership to be bought in on the people first approach as opposed to this is a technology, I'm going to tell people to use it, and we're just building a software? Like, how do you get the people you work with bought in on we have to have impact on the human side of things?
There you go. There you go. I love that. So, first of all, know that it's a journey. If you're listening to this, watching this, and you're like, that's how we want to be, that's how we want our clients to be, it is a journey. One, lead by example. Are you being a human company? Are you using the CRM in the way that it's going to be told or taught to use? Or if they saw under your hood, would you make some lame excuse about the cobbler's kids? And because we're helping everybody else, that's why ours is a storm, right? So lead by example. The second thing is, at the very beginning of the journey, I have a different conversation with most organizations and business owners of, listen, what I want you to realize is that we are on a journey to not cram your business into a SaaS software, but to wrap HubSpot around what you need, which means we are going to lean heavily in the customization and heavily in the questions that need to be asked and heavily into internal conversations. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make your humans talk to each other. And we're also going to make your humans listen to the people that are outside of the walls. And so when you start to lay down things like that, hey, they're doing it, they're a great example, I want to be like them, and here is the method to our madness and why we're headed in that direction. What's funny, Cameron, is many times the business owners are immediately like, heck yes. Like, I've been wanting to do this when I dreamt of this company. Like, this is the direction that I wanted to go. Or I thought I did, or I was lost in the forest of the trees, but yes, let's go. Sometimes it takes a little bit more effort to actually get the individual workers in the departments to understand what that means from them. Why? Most business owners are visionaries. What I just laid out on the first part of this episode is visionary talk, visionary mindset. It's not implementer or integrator like that. You have to talk and do things differently. So they start to understand it when we actually start to adjust the things under the hood and create the things externally that they can start to piece the puzzle together. And so the other element that I'll say here is you have to get really good at helping people. There's two ways I talk about it. Either you're helping people connect the dots, or you're showing them the connective tissue of how this begat that. And of course, you could go into the whole inbound and HubSpot force and friction conversation. I usually stay away from that because I just want them to understand when I move A, it does 1, 2, 3. When we move A and B, it does 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever that equals. Because now all of a sudden they start to think of like, oh, when I think about moving, my arm moves. Oh, when I change this property, my arm moves. Oh, when I actually put in this data, my brain gets smarter. Oh, like now we're literally getting into the actions, the connected dots, the connective tissue. You pair that with wrapping HubSpot around your business, and we get to some magical places.
I got a question for you about the opposite of the human first approach, because I think I see this a lot. And that's like the top-down approach, where somebody in a room somewhere that doesn't interface with the system on a day-to-day basis comes up with their idea of how things should work, what fields should be there, what should be in those fields, the workflow should be completely divorced of the day-to-day and not understanding the implications of that or the lack of ease of use. How important is it for whoever is kind of architecting this to really get into the field and see, like, step into the shoes of the person on the front lines that's going to be using this on a day in and day out basis?
Yeah. So my brain goes in a couple places. One, the person
following you.
The person you explained would never be my client. That's
Right.
number one. Two, if you're watching this and you live in your ivory tower, do me a favor and please get out of there, because your business will be 10, 20, 30x if you can at least, and I'm not saying you should be in the trenches doing, but you should be in the trenches knowing. Because if you're in the trenches knowing, then you know what needs to happen to actually optimize the piece that over time you may have not purposely removed yourself from. But time and management, and talking enterprise here, structure that ends up going 3, 5, 7 layers deep of this manager's manager. Sometimes you got to be able to step out of that and see what's truly happening. The other piece to this is if that's difficult and you can only do that a little bit of time, then double down on actually paying attention to voice of customer. And if your organization doesn't have a voice of customer that you can easily tap into and see and understand and start to make decisions based off of what the humans you're serving, the hurdles or aspirations that they have, that your product, software, or you actually help them get past or get to, you need to make sure you create a voice of customer process that you can pay attention to. So get out of your ivory tower, make sure you're in the trenches with your team on a level of know, and make sure you have that voice of customer where you can pay attention to what really matters to those prospects, leads, and customers, and hopefully evangelists that you're growing as you move forward.
So one of the talking points relevant to all of this is, and we've mentioned it, but wrapping HubSpot around your business. And this had me thinking about the opposite, which would be wrapping your business around HubSpot, right? Trying to fit your business into what HubSpot can do. What are some practical ways that you work with leaders and stakeholders to both get them to understand the concept of wrapping HubSpot around your business as opposed to the other way around, and then helping them to understand, like, how do we grow and adopt our business practices based on what HubSpot can or can't do, right? Or should you even change business practices based on what HubSpot can or can't do?
First of all, HubSpot and a dash of magic can do anything. HubSpot
Yes.
and a dash of integration can do anything. HubSpot and a dash of ingenuity, curiosity, and education can do anything. But you're talking about the far out conversations that don't really happen that often, to be honest with you. Usually what this looks like in my world is we have a first training we do right after a discovery session, and I call it HubSpot Foundations. And I talk about the ability to create a custom property. I share the index, the glossary that is out there of all the default properties of HubSpot. I talk about finding the gaps of what default versus custom versus what you're trying to segment on, what you're trying to report on, or the information that are your needs to knows. Because once we get into that and they start to understand things like objects, properties, custom or default, property groups, now we can carry on the conversation of, when you do this in properties, it goes here to forms. It then goes here to list segmentation, which impacts your communication. It goes here to reporting, which then allows you to make smarter decisions. It also goes here in the customizable left-hand side card. It also goes here now in your overview. It goes here in. So what that I'm doing is I'm creating a foundational understanding of segmentation, communication, conversion, AKA conversations, and reporting the success and their failure of what we're building in HubSpot, and showing them all the ways and places that we can now put that customizable data or build that customizable process in HubSpot. And we can go as simple as teaching them truly what deal stages are and are not, and if they need 1 or 2 pipelines, or down to the micro of not every workflow has to have an enrollment trigger, because you should build a library of workflows that people can just enroll if they want to teach them a certain thing or enable a certain thing. Like, really, and I think this is what maybe makes us different than some, not all, maybe most, is that we come from this from, again, the human first approach, which part of the mindset of this is education first approach, meaning if you know what you can do, if you know what you know, and if you know what you need to find out in the future, you actually have a real interesting path to what you're going to build and the stages you're going to build it pertaining to HubSpot and your business process, which, by the way, usually when somebody gets to us, they have a process. It's just diagnosing, is the process broken? If not, okay, how do we make HubSpot work with it? If broken, how do we fix it? And now how do we build it in HubSpot moving forward? Or you get somebody that will come to us and they'll be like, I don't know, we pick stuff up and put stuff down. Meaning we sell stuff and that's what we do. And we have this, like, there's such a wide range of very technical, process-driven companies and very like, we fly by the seat of our pants and we're a $7 million a year company. So you got to be flexible as you're going through this process.
It wasn't said explicitly, but I think that for anyone who's in revenue operations or anyone who is working and helping other businesses to grow and scale, something that is really important is the concept of measure twice, cut once, which is do the mapping at the beginning, have the difficult conversations, spend the extra hour or days or week on the planning and the necessity and the conversations around what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How is this going to have impact? As opposed to being an order taker, where I see a lot of revenue operations professionals or HubSpot admin where they get stuck with this, in that the C-suite says, this is what we want to build. And the HubSpot admin says, oh, this, yeah, okay, we're going to build it. And then now you have to go back and fix things and things break. And you didn't build it exactly what they wanted the first time because you were just doing what you were told. And so the flip side is, for any executives listening to this, I would challenge you and ask you to not necessarily slow down, but be mindful of your HubSpot admin as people, as humans, and know that if you have someone that is an order taker and they're doing their job and they're just doing what they're told, whether or not they want to be strategic is probably a separate conversation. But I would ask you to encourage them to be strategic and encourage them to challenge you and encourage them to give you pushback, so that the next time you say, I want this workflow, they have the authority to say, actually, this is more important, or that's a bad idea. Here's why.
Yeah, Cameron, I think you actually were headed in the right direction. And a lot of what you said is great, but I'll go out on a limb because I can. Listen, if you're a leader and you're watching this or listening to this, it's your job to slow down, to strategize, so that your organization can speed up. It's not a nice to have, it's a must do. Reprogram your brain to the point of, this is a slow down, strategize, and then move forward scenario. The other thing too, as far as the super admins that might be watching this, here's 2 things that I love to do whenever I get in any conversation with what might be the head of the organization or the chief marketing officer, slightly removed from the ivory tower, but still has their own little suite up there. I love to ask why and what if. I want it done this way. Why? And then just be real quiet for a real long time. Why? Oh, I saw it on a podcast or a video, or I listened to it on a podcast. Okay, so why do you think that'll work? And let them, and I'm telling you, the 7 levels of why to get to the root and to see if they can actually get you there is super powerful. And what if? well, what if we did this? What if this happened? And what I'm doing in the nicest of ways, by the way, because I don't sound like a dick when I'm doing it, but I'm shooting holes. What if? And if it stands up and they can get through the 5 to 7 layers of why, let's build it. Sounds good to me. But as a super admin, I have to live in the mindset of I need some convincing before I actually take action for the hours that you're paying me to do the work I'm going to do.
And this is, I think, closely related to the topic of creating amazing HubSpot super admin,
Yeah.
which is different from being a revenue operations professional. You can be a super admin without being in revenue operations. You can be in revenue operations without being the super admin, or you can be doing both at the same time. Depends. But I think that one of the things that really makes someone an amazing super admin is having the ability to give that pushback, ask why, ask what if. And if a company is steadfast in not giving a space for your admin to do that, then they probably have very burnt out admin who are taking a lot of requests who are not very happy.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if you have an admin that just wants to sit there and build things all day, which I know there are some who do, and that's their job role, and somebody else is thinking strategically, and you have those roles partitioned and it works, then that may not be a bad thing. But I think in the vast majority of cases with most companies, most HubSpot super admin want to be at least somewhat strategic, and they don't want to just be thrown requests of build this, do this, have this done by Friday.
Yeah. I think we need to rewind, though, to be honest with you. If you're a leader listening to this or watching this and you're like, oh, I don't have a HubSpot super admin. If you have more than one hub of HubSpot, marketing, sales, marketing, service, sales, whatever they are, whatever mix, if you have more than one hub, you have a super admin. You just haven't labeled them that. If you're the implementer in an organization and you have multiple hubs that you're trying to do stuff with, guess what? You're a super admin already. You just didn't know it. It's not that this is all of a sudden a magical title that was blessed by heaven above that we're going to call, you're going to be a super HubSpot super admin. No, it is something that was birthed out of necessity for HubSpot, going from a marketing software to a marketing and sales software to a marketing, sales and service software to a marketing, sales, service operations software to a marketing, sales, service operations commerce software to, I'm not going to keep going, but I could keep going. Holy shiz, you need an admin to make sure that all the levers are pulled and buttons are pushed and stuff isn't breaking other stuff when all of your random users are trying to do the thing that they need to do in the thing that you purchased because you heard some speaker talk about HubSpot can be the magic wand or silver bullet to your business. Super admins.
I'd add a reminder to the leaders out there that if you have a sales professional and they've stepped in and said, I will build our sales pipeline, and then now you realize, oh, they've got a knack for HubSpot. And so you ask them, help us to build this workflow. And then they say, while I'm at it, I will set up our currencies and I will set up our fiscal, right? And now you have someone who is a sales professional who is moving toward the role of being a HubSpot super admin, who's in this fine line of what really is my responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous game for a company to play and for leadership to not proactively address, because those people leave. They either become HubSpot admin and revenue operations professionals, or they say, I want to do sales. Let's go back and change pace. And usually it doesn't work that way. So word of caution out there.
Yeah, without a doubt. And by the way, I hope everybody, listen, I like to get emotional. Sometimes I get a little bit passionate. My little rant on marketing, sales, service, operations, CRM, CMS, and keep on going is on purpose. The fact that we're having a human first conversation is on purpose. The reason that when we launched sidekickstrategies.com as an agency, one of the first things that we made sure was on the website was super admin training. It's because we know that many organizations are stuck in this area of, we have what we think might be super admins in the making, but we need something that takes what might be years and years of HubSpot Academy courses and reading blog articles and mistakes and failures. There is no such thing as a failure. It's just life lessons. Anyway, all of that, and how can we streamline it, and how can we basically download the brain or information or get the 20% of what's important from somebody who has been using HubSpot for the last 12 years. And so because we love the humans internally, and because we want your organization to be able to create the dopest experience with a HubSpot admin at the helm, this is why we're doing our Sidekick Strategies super admin trainings moving forward and forever. Like forever. Like I will die on this hill that, listen, you have a super admin in your organization. You just don't know it yet. They need the education, training, mindsets, best practices that will get you from here to there quicker. Let's do it. Let's do it.
I wanted to touch base on that wrapping HubSpot around your business.
Yeah.
Versus wrapping your business around HubSpot. Because I think that's super unique compared to, if you think about some of the more older, existing, stagnant systems out in the ecosystem, they very much expect you to wrap your business around them. And people just take it for granted that you have to do that. And I'm wondering, since you've been in the HubSpot orbit for quite a while now, was it always the case that there was this open idea of you wrap HubSpot around your business, or has that kind of shifted more recently?
Yeah, I wouldn't say more recently, which, by the way, I will say I'm not the one that came up with that saying, but I am the one that will never let that saying go. I'll continue to use that saying over and over again. To be honest with you, I think the first person that said it was Remington Begg, and then he was quoted by Brian Halligan, and I was like, I am going to talk about this for the rest of my life, because there is something that humans are actually understanding and gravitating to when we say wrap HubSpot around your business. When it was a marketing tool, you could wrap it around your marketing. When it was a sales tool, you could wrap it around your marketing and sales. Then we added on the marketplace, and they went from an all-in-one to all-on-one, right? Because we had the marketplace and integrations. And so over time, and I would probably say maybe 2019, 2020-ish, right around in that kind of framework, HubSpot became grown up enough that all of a sudden you could start to have that conversation, because it was multiple departments. You had the flexibility to even do your website. You had the flexibility to do integrations. And so it has grown into that over time. But right now, we firmly sit in an environment with HubSpot that is, it gives you the tools and techniques and continues to build more that allow us just to wrap it even tighter around what you're trying to do from a business process. And what's fun is I've loved watching this journey along the way, because now I get to have conversations where, literally, this is maybe about 2 months ago, somebody came to us and they said, yeah, I just got tired of driving the old blue pickup truck when I could drive the orange Ferrari. Now, if you know what businesses they're talking about, they're HubSpot and somebody else, you realize the mindset shift that is happening at an astronomical level to where HubSpot is now compared to where HubSpot was, which allows us to continue to have that narrative of, yes, we have all the tools we need to wrap it around your business.
Yeah.
Which, to the comments that you made earlier about how with a little flourishing, you can do anything. That is so true. And it is so often that I might talk to somebody who has a lower tiered hub, which will soon be irrelevant with the newer model, but they have a lower tiered hub and they want certain features, but they don't have access to them. And so it's, how can we do this? And the answer is, there's always a way. We might need to bring in an app. We might need to use some custom code. That means we have to upgrade a hub. But there is almost always a way to do virtually anything that you want. And now you have to be creative with it. And this is where tying it back into empowering your admin to be leaders in their own right, having and allowing for that pushback and that slowdown is so important, because if you just say, let's build this, and you have an order taker, the only thing you're going to get back is we can't, versus someone that is empowered to step up and step into leadership and be strategic, where they'll say, with our current setup, here's the limitations. Here's a solution that allows us to do what you want. And I think we need more of that in the ecosystem, because I have been seeing way too many people, unfortunately, in the Sparketeer community, HubSpot admin, who are really amazing people, intelligent HubSpot admin, but they're limited by their companies, by their leadership, who are just, they're working with a hand tied behind their back, and they're saying, this is what we want. This is what we need. We expect you to do it. And it makes me sad, because it is the opposite of a human first approach.
Yeah.
Which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think this is a great place to tie in like the fundamentals, right? Because we could esoterically talk about human first and people would walk away and be like, what the beep does that even mean? What, y'all, this is a great episode, but I'm just not sure what the main part of what you're talking about. So I want to just list out 10 things when I think about a human first organization or human first humans inside of departments that we need to conversate about, or you need to think about. We might not even conversate about these, but I at least want to put them at your doorstep so you can start to think about them when you walk away from this episode. One, you should be an organization, if you're human first, that is or has empathy driven engagements. It is coming from a place that you've walked a mile in their moccasins. You've actually tried to pay attention to who the persona is, the problems, the roles, the goals, the challenges. Those engagements, number two, by the way, respectful engagements. Listen, if you look at a lot of organizations, there's a lot of noise and nonsense. What you're trying to do in this respectful engagement is add value, okay? Also, there has to be a level of authenticity in your interactions when you're doing this engagement. Like, do you know your brand voice and tone? Do people know your core values? Is your mission just something on your website, or is this the shit you live by each and every day? And it drives every action that you and your organizational employees take. Are you focused on service before sales? And is sales actually servanthood sales in your organization? Because that's number three. Are you a company of integrity and accountability? Are you who you are, and do you do what you say you'll do? Are you out there building long-lasting relationships so that there isn't churn and they're going out the back door? Or are you just solely focused on getting as many leads to customers, and hopefully we can keep them for just long enough to be profitable? Are you focused on personalizing the communication? And I don't mean, oh, let's add first name, Johnny. Okay, great strategy. Are you creating personal experiences for them to go through? And are you paying attention to detail, the finest detail? By the way, starting with properties, custom properties, questions, dependent fields and forms, second smart questions, paying attention to details, knowing the things that you need to know, having the things in place that your team needs to have. Are you in a mindset of continuous improvement and adaptation? Or are you stuck in the trenches of that's how we did it 2 years ago, that's how we're going to do it now? Do you have a mindset of problem solving? We're going to solve problems internally, and we're definitely focused on solving all the problems that any prospect, lead, or customer might have. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been being preached since the beginning of time, when cavemen decided to be marketers and sales. But is your sales and marketing teams aligned? Is there inclusivity in those teams? Are they headed in the same direction? Do they feel like they potentially could be doing the same things? Or are they just like dramatically this massive canyon in your organization. So those are like 10 things that when I think about how do we create the infrastructure and the mindsets that we have to have internally and externally, these lead us into having a human first organization and human first departments.
So here's a question, because we've talked about how being the HubSpot super admin isn't always the same as being the revenue operations person. Some companies have one person that fills both roles. Some people don't have a dedicated person to either. But do you think that universally it makes sense for the HubSpot super admin to be the person that is aligning teams and departments? Or do you think that there should be someone else that takes that on?
Listen, I think the super admin has the most power and ability to impact the way the organization runs. And here's the thing that I love when I get a hold of people who are doing super admins. I'm like, listen, I need you to adjust your mentality on one thing for me. Because right now, if you asked 100 super admins, are you a leader in your organization? Most of them would probably be like, no, not really. There's these guys and these gals, and then there's the lead from the back seats. Lead from the back seats. You are a leader. You are a technical leader. You are probably the person that is closest to each and every one of the heads of the teams. You're also probably the type of nerd that pays attention to what's happening on the website, what's happening with the customers, what's happening in chat. And maybe not because you want to sometimes, but because everybody's coming to you to tell you what's happening or what issues they're having. You are literally the heart of the organization when it pertains to how they're going to use HubSpot outside of the rest of the organization. And so while you might not be thinking of yourself as a leader right now, I want you to know that you are a leader in your organization. If you get smart about it, you can manufacture the proper change that needs to happen in the mindsets of those around you to where all of a sudden they're like, you know what? We should be a human first organization. And you can just sit back and laugh because you're like, hey, it was these conversations. It was the way that we built HubSpot. It was the things that we did as super admins that got us from there to here.
I think that's really an important takeaway for individuals. What are some things that leadership can do to encourage and empower their admin? And my philosophy on this is that if you don't trust your admin enough to be strategic, to drive impact, to give their opinion, then you really need to have a serious conversation with them about whether or not that's something that they don't feel comfortable about themselves, or is it because they feel like leadership is hindering them? But what's your take on leadership empowering their admin?
Yeah, there's so many things that could get me in trouble in this section right here, but it is what it is, and I'm going to show up. Yeah, I'm going to show up authentically. Yeah, authentically as me. Here's the thing. Part of your answer was in your question. You need to trust your humans. Hopefully, you're the type of leader that is always hiring people that are smarter than you. And hopefully, you realize that has been your strategy along the way. Therefore, if you're hiring people that are smarter than you, then you know you should trust those humans. Also, don't know about your belief structure, but listen, God gave you one mouth and two ears. So if you're a leader, I pray that you would listen more than you speak. Listen, back in the day, there was a company called E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. Are you the type of leader that everybody hears the Charlie Brown teacher because you're always talking? Or when you finally open your mouth because you've been listening intently to everything that's happening, internal and externally, that they're like, ooh, they're about to drop some gold. Everybody shut up and listen. Only you can answer that. I can't tell you if you're that person or not, but you have to listen more than you speak, and you have to trust. And hopefully, by all that is holy, if you are a leader in an organization, you are actually spending some time training or optimizing yourself as being a good leader. Like, you're not going to get how to be an amazing leader out of this podcast episode, but that's at least some bits that I can give you that I personally try to work on a daily basis of. I can't tell you how many times in a day inside I'm going, shut up, George. Shut up, George. Listen to listen. Don't listen to talk. Shut up, George. Shut up, George. Listen to listen. Don't listen to talk. And I'm forcing myself to be a great listener. When I listened at the highest level I can, it's amazing the amazing questions that I can actually get to that I never got to before.
I love that. And for me, being strategic and being in the admin role, and this is speaking for my own beliefs, but I believe that if you don't have the ability to be strategic as a HubSpot admin, then you are severely limited in your growth. And again, there are some people out there who, as a HubSpot admin, they just want to sit there and build. And that's not a bad thing. But if they want to grow their career and move toward leadership and move up organizationally, then they need to really invest in themselves to have the confidence to be strategic, to think strategically. And we're not going to have all of the how-tos on doing that in this episode, but it really is something that should at least be at the back of your minds. Am I not being strategic at my organization because leadership is hindering me? And therefore, maybe you need to just have a frank conversation, or is it because I feel like there are skills that are lacking? And so whatever the answer may be, only you can answer that. But that's something that every admin should be asking is, how can I be more strategic? How can I make myself more invaluable?
Yeah. So listen, I'm just gonna give you the real deal Holyfield for a second. There are sayings in life for a reason. The more you learn, the more you earn. It is a true fact. The more you know and understand, the more valuable you become in your organization. You want to hit the road running and you want to start building, which, by the way, when I'm teaching workflows, I always talk about how people want to go into workflows and they want to hit that trigger button. How about your goal? How about your naming convention? How about your folder structure? How about the things that you need to think about before you even go in and start to build the workflow, right? Here's the thing. There will be people that will want to immediately go in and build, and I'll ask them, do you have your marketing certification? No. Sales certification? No. Do you have any certifications? No. I was just given this software. I dove in. I'm a hands-on learner. I'm just going to build. Ladies and gentlemen, are you building with Lincoln Logs? Are you building with brick blocks or Legos now? Back in the day, I'm an old dude, right? There was brick blocks before Legos. Or do anybody remember the Erector set, which actually had nuts and bolts, and you could actually do a battery and make stuff move? Are you creating the Lincoln Log of HubSpot portals? Or are you creating an Erector set that everybody loves and actually has some freaking power to it? The answer is based on the amount of time you've spent educating yourself. And if you're a super admin and you have not embraced education over entertainment, then you have a little bit of journey to go through. Now, I'm not saying you don't have fun. And I'm not saying that you don't relax, but I'm saying there has to be a time in your life, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, where you're focused on how do I become the master of my craft? How do I make it so I am highly valuable? How would I? Job security, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is? It's 45 certifications. It's 20 certifications. It's just educate yourself.
Mark, do you have any additional opinions on that one?
You heard that, kids? No, I think the message is great. I think Cameron flagged me on that because I have a different opinion, I think, on education. I think I think I would fall under the category of the person you described somewhat jokingly. I tend to do and learn by doing than traditional learning. But I think that if we talk about that human approach, I think everybody has different kinds of learning. And I think there are people that they can do really well on a test and not be able to apply it in real life, and vice versa. So,
which, by the way, let me rewind. I don't care if you ever take the test. I don't care if you get the certification. but at least watch the video, read the article, read the transcript. Like what I'm saying, and by the way, you as a hands-on doer, you'll do till you get stuck and you'll go read a knowledge article. Guess what you just did? You educated yourself to get you past a hurdle. So it might look different for everybody, right? This is why, by the way, on Sidekick Strategies, why we actually make sure that we have an audio player for our articles, usually when we can, a video for our articles, and text for our articles, because we know that some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners, and some people just frankly to read. I don't know about you, you're crazy. I fall asleep when I read. Anyway, we do the things that we do for them, not the things that we do because we like it. And as super admins, you have to do the things to do for them, not do the things because you like it. And you do have to figure out, what is the best way for me to learn? What is the actual goal? Do I care about the certifications and showing them off? Maybe yes, maybe no. Am I able to watch or read the information, retain it, and get into this cycle? Educate, execute, educate, execute, educate, execute. If that's your goal and you can get in that rhythm, you're going to kick butt and take names.
So here's a question that is tangential to everything we've talked about. Should HubSpot admin who are strategic and are performing a revenue operations role, so really more in the RevOps function here, should they be in the C-suite and or have a seat at the C-suite table?
Ooh.
And does that matter?
Wow. Again, I could get tons of hate mail.
Oh,
He pleads the fifth, folks.
I would no. Oh God, no. That is not how I roll. That's not how I show up for these things.
George
I'll never
B.
plead
Thomas.
the fifth.
I don't know. Maybe you thought this was George C. Thomas, but we're talking about George B.
Yeah. I would classify myself as maybe one of the better super admins on the planet. If you asked me to be part of the C-suite, I would tell you, no, thank you. I do not need death by committee. I am not good with politics. Can you please allow me to just educate myself, strategize, and implement the stuff that's going to actually drive revenue for our organization? Because the rest of what I might get into as soon as you try to put a title on me is probably going to be friction and not the force that you're truly looking for. Now, if your goal is to have that title and you care about that junk and you think that it'll empower you to be part of the C-suite and a super admin, hey, Billy, go for it. But me personally, I don't think it matters, because Cameron, I go back to this statement I made earlier: lead from the back seats. Lead from the back seats.
Yeah, I would say that no, I don't see active super admins becoming part of the C-suite while they're super adminning. But I do think that I recently had a conversation on my other podcast, the RevM podcast for all folks out there, with the CEO of somebody in our space. And she observed that she was seeing much more CRO positions being taken up by folks that are coming out of ops, which I think was the initial idea to begin with. But more often than not, I think we were seeing it just be like the next step up for a VP of sales. But she was observing that that position is more and more being taken by people who are senior RevOps folks and now joining the C-suite, giving that angle. So I think that's an interesting development, but I don't see anyone who's got to see at the beginning of their title actively being an admin of the CRM, unless we're talking about the smallest startup.
Yeah, if it's like a one-man shop, you're at all. You got them all the titles. Have fun with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked at startups that were like 10 people, and even there, the CEO.
Yeah.
There was no one in the C-suite that had that.
It's interesting because I would agree with. So the question was positioned in a should super admin be in the C-suite or not? I will agree with you, Mark. I can see where it would be an escalation of a super admin moving up into the C-suite because somebody is replacing their seat because they freaking know everything about the organization. So a natural progression, I agree with. This and that combined, I'm like, please no. You will break stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to the point of job security, I hold strong to the belief.
Can you do job security with the scary deep voice?
Job security.
I maintain the belief that the super admin should make it their goal to know the organization better than anybody else. Now, the C suite are still going to do their job with the vision, the direction, but the VP of sales is focused on their team. The CEO is focused on the overall vision of the company. And I maintain that a really strong super admin who's secure in their role is able to go in, know every facet of the business, and then reduce friction between teams. Because that's truly what makes you invaluable is when you don't just increase sales, but you increase sales by aligning marketing and sales. That's powerful.
Yeah. 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 The great
George,
connector, the great aligner. Yeah.
and any final thoughts on that notion as we wrap here?
I don't know about on that notion or not, but I will say you might get caught in the weeds on some of this stuff. And what I would want you to realize is that it is all about being, and in my words, it's all about being a happy, helpful, humble human who happens to use HubSpot to drive a massive amount of ROI, cash flow, and joy in their organization with the things that they're enabling people to do with the tool that they're wrapping around their business processes.
That is so powerful. Today we talked about a lot and we gave a lot of really practical tips both for HubSpot admin to be empowered in their role. We talked about how leadership could and should empower their HubSpot to a higher degree and how to really make sure that you wrap HubSpot around your business and that you take a human first approach to everything you do when it comes to HubSpot and being a super admin. George, thank you so much for being on the show today. For those who don't know, or maybe you're listening to this on some other platform, you can follow all of us on LinkedIn, Cameron Collins, Mark Lerner, and George B. Thomas. He'll be the one that has all of the HubSpot bona fides. If you aren't a member of the Sprocketeer group, make sure you check us out in Slack. The link is in the show notes. But join the Sprocketeer group. It's the largest group of independent HubSpot admin. And also go ahead and check out our friends, Deanna Goloff and Kyle Jepson. They run the HubSpot Admin Hug Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Central. And if you're interested in checking out other episodes, you can check us out on Spotify and YouTube. Look for the Sprocket Pod. Thank you, George, for being on with us today. And everyone, Sprocket on. Bye, team.
Have a good weekend, everybody.